For those who I don't know or don't know me, I think I know most of you, I'm Nick Stovall. I play first oboe in the National Symphony, and pleased to be here working with two oboe players and a trumpeter this afternoon. Jameson, what are you going to be playing this afternoon first?
The first thing that's written is 6 Hypothesis.
Great. Whenever you're ready, take it away. So would you like, how would it be if we do each one bit by bit? So let's work first on pan and then we'll go in order, if that's okay with you. Yeah, very well played, lots of good details, and it strikes a balance between being faithful to what's on the page and then also incorporating personal feeling, improvisation, all that sort of stuff. Do you know much about the story for each of these, the little picture that they paint?
Well, now I can like teach you mythological, like sense, but like I like an idea, basically, like, so it's about Pan. He has like this like wood flute. It's kind of like him like, or I like thinking of it like him like, you know, testing out like a flute role so they can get used to it.
So that's what comes in with the repeated notes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, some people say that it has some relationship to like what we do on our reeds, like, you know, that sort of thing. I don't know that I buy that because if a flute doesn't have a reed, you know. So, but there's some sort of, I like the idea of testing out, or, you know, something furtive is going on at that moment, which you bring out nicely. So yeah, it's the same mythological character as in Daphnis and Chloe, and you know that's the same sort of guy with hooves on the bottom. At the beginning it says Sins of Missoura. Those who don't play the oboe maybe aren't familiar with this set of pieces, but it's 6 different little pictures of ancient myths. So this first one is about Pan. And at the top of the page it says Sins of Missoura, or without time, but then he says 8th note approximately equals 138. So it's 2 sort of divergent things. I think what you do at the beginning, Jameson, is nice to actually bring it into some sort of time, some regularity, and then you depart from it later. Each of those starting points, though, could perhaps be a little bit more. You say it says forte, and then diminuendo forte, diminuendo, and then after the first section you get to pianissimo. So I'm wondering if that could be, you leave some more room for those repeated A sharps to be a little bit less. Take it from the opening again if you wouldn't mind. For me, the second entry is shaped more like a crescendo and diminuendo rather than having the F sharp that you enter on be the strongest. I think you want that F sharp, the first one, to be more than the quarter note that follows. The quarter note, you're going to get a lot of it because it lasts for a longer period of time, but the 32nd notes you don't get quite as much. What's more? And just as you did, sustaining in the fermata so that you don't give away the fact that we're going to have something a little bit softer, a lot softer actually coming up. So, could the A sharps have more clarity to them even in that soft dynamic? I know you're taking a chance by playing so softly and I appreciate it, but I wouldn't want to play so softly that we lose out on the clarity there. Acceleration through, it's suddenly faster the last three. Is that your intention?
Yeah, I was thinking of like just like letting the rhythm do it. Because I get confused.
Yeah, the counting.
Yeah.
If you, it's 6 notes and then 3 notes, right? So 9 altogether. I think if you can manage to think 1 and 2 and 3 and da 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 da. So 6 notes, but it's 3 groups of 2 that way. With just the tiniest bit of acceleration, I think that you will blur the lines rather than it sounding like ya da 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 ya da 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 da. You know, see what you can do there. And maybe one strategy would be to start a little bit slower, still with this idea of like testing it out, kind of being sneaky. Fortissimo to pianissimo, and I feel like we go from fortissimo down to mezzo forte really quickly, and we don't have the full range there. Think about the fact at the beginning of this line, where you're making crescendo from pianissimo, that you make that very gradually over the course of things until you reach fortissimo with your final F sharp, A sharp. Try and make it more symmetrical so that it decreases at a similar rate that it increased. it helps to think of it in this way. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 beats of these repeated A sharps. If it helps think fortissimo, forte, mezzo forte, mezzo piano, something like that, you know, that you're tracking the progress. Do you mind just doing one more time and then we'll continue? That first gesture you make, E-D-E, should be quite slow in my opinion. Quite a lot slower than anything that we have yet heard. And then trying to speed from there. And I think it serves a couple of purposes. One, it's faithful to what he's written, but another purpose that it serves is to establish those little notes as being on the beat. I think this section is very, it's susceptible to sounding like pickup notes, like, which is okay, but it's not what's on the page actually. So it's yada 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 yada. So yeah, my recommendation for you would be to start a little slower, and it'll also help with this feeling of improvisation, making it up. So it gets bigger, it gets more impassioned through the course of it. Would you try that? From lento, mosquito, accelerando? The last group of 8 notes it is has a crescendo underneath of it, even further reinforcing, he says, you know, pianissimo crescendo, and then sempre crescendo, and then finally, so I would try and draw a line under those, like you're underlining a word in a text or something like that. That those last 8 notes are really very emphasized. How about one final time? Good. So we're sort of in A major, D major territory, right? We've finished on a D, but more or less, I think this piece is say it's in A major for the most part. In order to perceive that well, I think feeling that downward slur, the scale going down, I mean, try and pick out the D, the middle D, if you can. For us to perceive the harmony. And there is harmony, I think, even though it's one line. Yeah, it might be beneficial for you to think about drawing out the upper, like that first triplet is slower than the 30-second notes which follow. Yes, and it is written to have a crescendo all the way to the end, which isn't the most elegant elegant sounding thing, but it is what it's written. You know, maybe this character is a little bit rustic. Anyway, so try doing something that maybe feels a little rude to you at the end. And then the last three notes can be very, very soft in relation. Great. And those last three notes, if you want to delay them a little bit, you played the Edythe quintet on Monday, right? This, to me, it's like the timing of that last bassoon note in the first movement of that piece, you know? The longer that you wait, the more that you sort of hold out the tension, the more humorous it is, and the more it kind of makes people smile at the end of it. Maybe you could do just from lento ma subito accelerato to the end there, for the sake of timing, the sake of differentiating the dynamics, all those sorts of things. Great. How about number 2? And for the sake of our audience, why don't you tell what the title of this is and what it's about?
So, it's Phaeton, who rode upon the chariot of the sun for one day and was hurled into the river Patis by a thunderbird. So it's about like the chariot.
The title of the set is The Six Metamorphoses. So each piece has to do something with a change that the character in the piece or somebody involved in the story of each one goes through some sort of a change. So this business about being hurled into a river and, as I say, for one day I was hurled into the river Patis by a thunderbolt. So for me, that's where this metamorphosis, this change takes place, is at the very end there. So just as you did so nicely, playing very softly and sort of whispering is the thing to do. The things that we could work on perhaps are in the louder section, so that it has this really robust, sturdy quality of a chariot, like you mentioned. What do you make of these accents? Are they expressive accents? Are they rhythmical accents? Is it mostly with the tongue? Is it with the wind? How are you thinking of them?
I guess rhythmical.
Rhythmical.
I guess like establishing like where we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it becomes even more important as we go along. when you have the two notes, 2/8 followed by an 1/8 rest. Again, so it's similar to the first one where it doesn't start to sound like a pickup note. I felt, particularly in this territory or so, that it's very susceptible to getting da-da, 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 pick up. Let's go back to the beginning. When you make those accents, how do you think about them physically? Like, how are you creating them with your sound production, all the rest?
More air.
Yeah, I definitely would buy the more air thing. I think tonguing harder starts to make it sound like it's coming up against pressure. And there are times where maybe we do want to have a little bit of pressure in the sound, but by and large, my preference would be to have a spacious approach that hardly ever comes up against any pressure. So maybe clue into the more air part of that equation and let the tongue ride on top of the air. Do you hear how it starts to sound like pickup notes? Do you hear what I'm hearing? You could be a little bit more insistent about the fact that the accents are on the beat. And the other thing maybe that would help is not feeling like those 1/8 rests have any amount of compression. You could really kick those notes. Right, okay, so now I've encouraged you to go maybe too far in one direction. Let's swing the pendulum back towards the middle. Now, what do you think? Forte all the way through that bar, or is there any kind of lessening of tension?
Well, it's not written, but I was thinking like that things.
Yeah, I would counsel you against making a decrescendo there. I mean, I feel like this story at this point is still pretty aggressive. There's room for aggression in this music, I'd say. Maybe you could start from there. Anticipating going on into the next slur group. Let this be a little bit more easy. There's something kind of atmospheric about it as opposed to the opening, which is so aggressive. I wonder if it would be useful to you to imagine, or even to play just for a second, if you would be willing to undertake a little experiment, to play a repetition of those G's. So like, no, I forgot about the last one. But I think that the repetitions might be useful to you if you're willing to just try for one moment. Right, and then as much as possible trying to minimize that repetition so that it's like just a residue off of the main note. One more time. tendency to want to move through those rests. It might be the sort of thing that if you play it into a recording device and listen back to it, you would hear it immediately and solve it. But I leave that to you. How about the next pianist will come in? The articulation descending into the very low register.
I don't know if those I was slowing down.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's easy.
Do you feel like it's achieving the goal?
Yeah, it would be better.
Okay. What physically do you think you could do to make that work better for yourself?
Maybe paying attention to like the air. What I'm doing.
Air is a big part of it, of course. I would wonder about the position of not just the embouchure, meaning how you're holding the reed, but the position of the mouth. I think especially in the low register on the oboe, we want to be in a position of big space in the front of the mouth particularly. Tongue up in the back, down in the front, which creates a nice resonating space up near the reed. If we're too clamped down on the reed for either placement of pitch or any other reason, it becomes extremely difficult to play well in the low register. There is such a position as sort of low note position on the oboe. Why don't you start just from that low G, the last bar that you play. See how deep and complete you can make all of those notes, even though they're articulated. That's better. Are you worried about them being flat at all?
No.
Good. You shouldn't be. I would say let them be as low as they are going to be in pitch. Really letting it be where it's going to be. I like that very much myself. The notes were more complete, there's less cracking, and it was more colorful. How about from the lead into that last angry section? Don't lose it at the end though. Same idea that you're going to hold the air firmly all the way to the last note. Excellent. Yeah. Thanks for being a good sport about that. I think it really does make a difference, and it sounds, as I said, it sounds more complete, more full in the low register when you do that. And actually, my perception of it was that it wasn't slowing down actually quite as much as you had been before. It sounded even better. Good. Well, in the interest of keeping on time, why don't we leave it here with just these two? But thank you for your fine playing, Edythe.
So I'll be playing the Full-On Sonata for oboe, first with Kelly.
really, really fine playing for both of you. It's a pleasure to hear. A few things that I would want to zoom in on, which are interpretive choices, maybe we could say. That's sort of the heading of it. And I know that we had spent a little bit of time on this before, and so forgive me if I'm repeating myself a little bit or going into things that we had talked about the other day, but I think there's still room that you could advance further in certain directions with it. So, for the benefit of those here assembled, maybe could you say a few words about this movement, maybe the title and sort of the dedication of the whole piece?
Sure. So, Poulon dedicated this to Prokofiev. I think it was his friend, and he went back to his country. So this is like a memoir for him. And throughout the piece, it's like reminiscing and also anger, and then back down to like a resolution.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was saying, as I was saying to you the other day, I see some of this filtered through the lens of the idea that we go through stages of grief when we lose somebody, especially somebody close to us. This first movement being called Elegy, so a piece of music written for somebody who's passed away. So yeah, just as you say, there's anger, there's sadness, there's acceptance, you could say, at the end, which isn't necessarily to say that it has a happy ending, but that you've at least achieved some level of equanimity at the end there as you're holding up that one lonely note. My personal feeling about the first two bars and how it relates to the rest of the piece is that it should be more or less in a tempo, that it relates to the main tempo. It's not as if it's two bars that are, disconnected from what is to follow. The marking, it gives a quarter note equals 66, yes, but then also in French words it says to play peacefully. So what do you think about when you start to play, take a breath that's in the tempo, and then more or less playing those four notes, a half note and three quarters, playing them closer to being in the rhythm of the piece. And I think it also maybe makes it easier then to bridge the gap over that, the second bar into the third. Then it's easier to have the piano place that chord and then you come right off of it into the 16th note that falls. Just if you give that a try. That's nice. I appreciate you trying that for me. Now, it seems like there's a little moment of instability though on that 16th verse, that you're reacting a little bit. I wonder if you stay ready. I don't think there's any trouble about fatigue at this point. So keep the oboe, if not fully in your embouchure, then close by. Maybe give just the slightest bit of a gesture where you feel the downbeat of that third bar. You might be able to be a little bit more demonstrative anything, whatever we can do to make it feel less nebulous is going to be appreciated both by our partner at the piano, but also I think by the audience as well, so that it comes in sort of a frame. Now, as we were saying the other day, the dynamics are very stark in this piece. We have piano and then subito mezzo forte and then subito piano. Everything changes very rapidly on bar lines. I think you could arrange it so that we feel this mezzo forte a little bit clearer. I feel like the color from this piano is bleeding a little bit into mezzo forte so that we don't feel such a difference there. How about just from your cue of the third bar, so go. Conscientious there. The E and the middle E and the middle D sit a little bit high to my ear. And I'm wondering if it might just be a modification of the vowel sound that you're using. You know, that there's a difference in color between E and oo. You know, one is a little bit more direct, one is a little bit more diffuse. So when you get to like, that E there feels a little bit direct. I wonder if you diffuse it a little bit is all it needs in order to blend more closely with the piano. Could we do maybe just from number 1, so 1 bar piano? Maybe right from that, number 2, if you wouldn't mind continuing there. mezzo pianissimo or something. I mean, it's a beautiful color and it's wonderful that you have that kind of control, but I think it goes a bit against what's printed there, and also it'll impact the way that we feel number 4 as being 3 Ps. You know what I mean? How about from number 3, right on the downbeat? Yeah? That's a big diminuendo in my book. Do you feel that?
Yeah.
Try it. Still outgoing, but you don't want to give up just yet. How about that same spot, number 3 again? I'm afraid that's another note that wants to sit a little bit high. You seem to have a good result with that ooh versus e kind of thing on the D's and E's. Do you feel that after sitting?
Yeah, that's a little.
Yeah. You can easily point it too low, but see about voicing that slightly differently. I really appreciated the dynamics though just before. Thank you for that.
Should I go at 3?
Let's do. Thanks. Do you know what I mean? One, two, more or less in tempo there. Could we try it that way? From 5? Sentimentality is written into the music, and I think it's a slippery slope if we start to add too much to it. That's just my personal feeling, that everything that he meant for us to do in terms of the expression is on the page, and I hesitate myself to add too much beyond that. Now, we get to this figure here at number 6, sans tracé. Not any faster, just as you're doing. I wonder though about tightening up those 30 seconds, that they're really close to the next. That you're really digging those notes out, accentuating them, and delaying them as much as possible to be tight to the next beat. 6. But when adding to that high E, what I hear is a bit of, I hear the accent and then a release of the accent, and then you have to come back. I wonder if, given the fact that it's in a fairly fast, you have to move on from it fairly quickly, that you don't have time to go away and come back without disturbing the rhythm too much. So make an accent that's perceived as an accent and then sustain afterwards. So you don't have to do more than, less than, come back to it and keep going, but it's just accent and go on. Yes? Can the 30-second notes falling down, could they, is that what I want to say? The 4 lines. So in any case, the little notes, a little bit more rhythmical. Yeah, like picking up that high B, I think is going to be useful to you. Number 6 once more, please. Is it possible that you're getting off slightly too soon? A little longer, I think, for the tied 8th, going over to 16th. 6 again? Delaying that 30-second note there, I think is necessary so that it is differentiated from any other dotted rhythm that we have. afraid to enunciate those notes, I think. Sometimes in the high register especially, we have to kind of enunciate in the way that you would if you were speaking in a large room. Larger than this even, you know? So that somebody can hear your words really clearly. Could it be 15% softer for penis more? Excellent. Good. How about together, continuing just there at number 10? Great, good pitch and color on that last note. What about, since you play it in such a pristine fashion, do you think you could make the attack even more pristine? I hear the slightest bit of tongue noise, a little bit of something before the note actually begins. How about maybe that 3/4 that piano alone? Good. Yes. I like that attack much better. Good. Let's leave it here now.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So, what do you have a picture in your mind of this piece? I mean, in terms of like, obviously it's a piece of music from the Baroque period. Do you have anything in mind about Mr. Marcello or the circumstances around this piece? Or anything at all, really?
I sort of think of this setting that he was in when he wrote it, just in 17th century Venice, and sort of that noble, like, courtly atmosphere. And even though it's in minor, it still has this dignity to it. And so sort of thinking of that attitude.
Yeah, I love all of that. Nobility, elegance. I'm with you with all of that sort of stuff. I wonder if you could exude more of that with a little bit more flow. And I don't mean necessarily like a faster tempo, but so much of this is done by sequences. You know, we're sequencing up and sequencing down. Even with rather sort of sparse materials, it actually is a fairly elegant piece of music for the compositional material, so to say. Oh, so this is you're in trumpet. So the piece is in D, but you're playing. This is trumpet in what? B flat. Yeah. So I can't look at what you're playing. That's not going to work for me. But we'll manage somehow.
Okay.
We'll manage. Right from this opening, try and think of it as one big gesture rather than I'm exaggerating a little bit. You didn't play it beat by beat, but if you think of the whole thing as being encapsulated within one phrase, and that 16th rest, rather than being a point of repose or anything, it's actually urging you forward.
Okay.
Could we do that just from the opening? The resolution of those kind of, I guess they're anticipation notes. Sorry, that's a little lame sounding. I guess what I'm wishing for is a little bit more straight ahead without too much marking these expressive notes. Can we do part 7 once again? gestures that you make go with the harmony. You know, there's one harmonization for the yada da 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 yada da 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 da. And I don't think it's too plain to do it that way. Personally, I don't. You can depart from that as you go forward, right? And you can highlight certain notes in the sequences and make it a little bit more toward the idea of fussy, if you want to do that. But I think, at least to begin with, establishing yourself well that way gets it in a flow. Fine. Maybe going on to the next. So perhaps just write on the, we'll do, so of course you could pick up the cadence of bar 12.
about like affecting the rhythm so much that it's going to ruin the actual notes.
Mm-hmm. There's I should come up with a better word for it, but there's just this kind of flow that one thing follows the next in a very predictable and satisfying way. And I think in playing music, we should be concerned about that to a certain extent, right? When we're performing, we are often setting up expectations, and then we either defy them or fulfill them. And the choice there are many choices how we choose to proceed with that. But there are some ways that leave an audience feeling a little bit sort of crunchy and uncomfortable, and other ways that you just go, oh, you know, it's sort of like you turn on the radio and somebody's playing this piece of music, you know, some Baroque orchestra or whatever, and whatever you think about performance practice and whatnot or whatever, but there's something about maybe the flow that you hear, and it just is, that's part of the reason that people listen to music, classical music. There's this sort of soothing quality to it. So, whatever that's worth. Maybe after that cadence, so like around 33 or so, 34. arrangement on anything in particular, or?
No, there's a couple. There's one of the trumpet recording that I took a few moments from that, and a couple of these are just small things from other Baroque oboists that I couldn't give you names.
Sure, that's really fine. So that you're aware, there is a version of this for keyboard that J.S. Bach ornamented, and there's some really lovely and creative things that can be stolen and lifted out of that. The C minor version that oboists most often play has some very, well-loved ornaments in this that oboe players know, as if it is the way that the piece was written. But you can certainly take and pick and choose things from other versions, and I particularly like that Bach harpsichord version, which I believe is in C minor itself as well. In any case, yeah, just curious to ask about that. I think whatever we do in this, it should be to the service of creating a certain kind of atmosphere, right? You want to create this kind of effortlessness, this ethereal quality. I wondered about the beginning and how softly you could come in. Is that low? Is that a low note, that E? Or
it's in the middle.
The middle range. Yeah. How difficult would it be to come in with a little bit less volume, a little bit more presence? Maybe just from the bar before or something. consider starting a little bit slower. A small point, but I think in a slow piece like this, if you don't play full speed through the entire duration, and again, it gives it that feeling of development. I wondered also about maybe coming in slightly sooner. You know, maybe picking up with that dotted rhythm or if there's something like that. It feels something about it feels too sparse. I don't know. Could we do 30, 31? Maybe bar 31? Does that make sense?